Good deal. Thank y'all for being here. I know I'm a little later than some of you would have liked, but I told you we do a season recap, and that's what we're going to do today. Um, I respect the job y'all have. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. I'll probably get in trouble for saying it, but like at one point I thought I was going to do what y'all did in high school, and um, I was the editor of our school newspaper, and I found out real quick I didn't want to do that anymore. So I do respect the writing process and what y'all do, and for the most part, really fair. And so you deserve a kind of recap and kind of where we're at, roster wise, staff wise, and all those types of things. So that's kind of what I hope to get accomplished today. Real quick, one update on Mike Montoro. Most of y'all know, y'all work with him a lot. He had major surgical procedure. He is doing well. He is recovering faster than they thought. He's in really good spirits, and so that's good news. And Fergale is filling in and doing a great job. So he's getting back in the weeds a little bit. So it's been good for him too. So talk about 22 and kind of wrap it up. And I think just in a real quick, it wasn't good enough. It's on me. I accept it. It's not something that like I shy away. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that. It wasn't good enough, and I'm proud of how our guys finished. You know, winning 2 of the last 3. I am proud of that, and beating Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Those are big wins, but we weren't consistent enough, and so I know that. And, start with offensively. Really felt like we underachieved on that side of the ball, and we got here and I'll kind of give you a little bit of the back story of why I felt like that. Is when we got here in January of 19, early on in spring, I knew this was going to be a little bit of a process, as far as getting the offense. And we made a decision that if I had to do over again, I definitely would, is we were going to go young on the offensive line, and we had young receivers that we were going to work to develop. And really took some lumps during that development process as far as O-line in 19 to 20 and kind of growing with some of the youth at receiver. And last fall was really the first point where I felt really good about our personnel from an experience and a talent level, where I really felt like that we can compete week in and week out against the top of our league. And we just didn't do that. We didn't give ourselves enough chances. When I look at it, I think the 3 areas that we have to fix, they're I call them the 3 E's, and it's what I've been talking about with our offensive staff, is we got to eliminate the errors, too many turnovers and too many penalties on the offensive side of the ball, and several of those at critical times, and we've got to be able to clean those up. The second E is efficiency. If you look at our P and 10, which is a football term for your first play in a series, like we've got to be much more efficient there, and then on third and medium. And the third E, so errors, efficiency, and third E is explosives. We regressed in that. We'd been kind of steadily building. We regressed in that a year ago, and to me, those are kind of from what we've got to improve at. Those 3 E's. Talk about staff on the offensive side. Is talk about Chad Scott being promoted first and foremost, and it's a promotion that he earned. And so last year, he had the title of run game coordinator, and that just wasn't a title on paper. Like, he really coordinated our run game, and I thought we showed a lot of growth. If you look at his position room, I think they've from 20 on have really exceeded expectations, and I think you've seen him in the way his guys have produced, and he's been our most consistent recruiter, not only at positionally but from an area standpoint. And he's dynamic in front of the room. Guys want to follow him. I think you saw the social media clip that Clay put out, and that was the guys. He is really well liked. He's really well respected, and he's earned that opportunity to lead that side of the unit. All right, lead that unit on the offensive side. And as far as play calling, we're going to kind of get to that. We're going to kind of maneuver through that as we go through the spring. But I'm extremely confident in how he's handled himself since we named him, as far as leading our unit meetings and some of the stuff that we've been able to do within the compliance rules. I'm excited about where that's going. Moving Reagan back to quarterbacks. This is why. I think sometimes when we talk about coaching, we get caught up on stats and things like that. When I'm looking at coaching, I'm looking at who maximizes talent, who gets the most out of their guys. Like, a lot of publicity and stuff's given to guys that coach like these phenomenal players. Well, other than managing expectations, like coaching great players isn't overly difficult. All right, who gets the most out of the guys that are in the room, who maximizes talent, who can develop, and I really think along the way, and I'll even go to the guys that we've had here, is I really think that when he coached quarterbacks, he maximized what they were, and so we've got two young guys that have been here that I think are on the cusp of being really good Big 12 starters, and he can get them across that. And then we got Sean Boyle, who's arrived, I'll talk about here in a second. And so there's a high level of trust with him as well. Bilal Marshall will bring him back. Probably as good of a young coach as that we've had, that I've been around ever since leading offenses I thought it made a lot of sense to bring him back. He's going to be an elite recruiter as he gets experience. He's a really good teacher on the grass. I love his story. Kind of a quarterback, and then got moved to receiver from South Florida, went and worked in sales and was doing really well, and decided that's not where his passion was. And he came back to us as an older guy starting his professional career. And I think you're going to see some real growth out of our group there. And then lastly on offense is Blaine Stewart. And I want to be real clear about this. Like, Blaine didn't get hired because his dad was a head coach here. Blaine did a really good job of growing and developing relationships within this building, and had the opportunity myself, and then a lot of our staff, is credit to Coach Tomlin. Like, he's tremendous. He's been a great. He's really benefited us here, and Blaine's kind of nurtured that relationship. And so I had an opportunity to go up and watch him coach. And a lot of our staffs had an opportunity to go up and watch him coach. And when we started going in the direction of how we were going to organize, like, multiple staff members brought me Blaine's name and said, "Hey, listen, this guy can coach. He's been with the Steelers for 5 years." Started really doing my research other than just knowing him personally, and remembering him being a really good active guy with NFL veterans while we went up to OTAs and things like that. And so really excited. He's got to learn the recruiting piece of it. That's the one thing he hasn't done. But the football, he's going to add to our room. So that's kind of, from an offensive standpoint, that's kind of where we're at. And I'm going to be a little bit long-winded here at the beginning. And then y'all are going to ask questions, and this will maybe take a little bit longer than normal press conference, and I'm okay with that. Defensively, so not up to our standard. I think if you look at how we played defense over the first 3 years here, I think we established the way that we wanted to play. We had a unique system, and really and gave us a chance. Not in every game, but in a high percentage of our contests, we gave ourselves a chance to win as we kind of got the personnel where it needed to be offensively. And then last year it just wasn't. It wasn't up to our standards. And I think if you look at it, and I've probably watched more defensive film than at any point in my career, just in that from signing date to when it went live recruiting again, is our issues were pass defense, give up way too many explosives. We didn't create takeaways in our third down defense, and the games we lost wasn't good enough. The games we won, significant difference in third down defense. But pass defense, explosives, lack of takeaways, and then third downs. And so I think when things go wrong, you start really looking and saying, okay, why? Why? And I think the easy thing to do is, a lot of times, and you see this across football landscape, is the easiest thing is, let's just start firing people. Let's just start firing people. And I'm not saying that's the wrong reaction all the time, but I don't think that's the right answer in a lot of cases, because you see a lot of mass firings, and then do they get better or not? And there's a lot of things that go into that. And so when I started really kind of evaluating where we were defensively, I get to this is like we need to win now, right? That's what it is. Like y'all wrote about it. I think that's fair. Like we need to have a winning season. And so how do we make these improvements within a 9-month period to get to where we need to be in the fall, which is winning football games versus an extremely difficult schedule. And the best way, after going through and really evaluating everything, the best way, in my opinion, is consistency. And so we've got to coach better on the defensive side of the football. I think there's no question about that. We've got to coach better. The portal hurt us last year, and more so than I probably realized. Probably started realizing it once we got into fall camp, but it hurt us. We lost, 4 or 5 starters in the portal. And I'm not making an excuse. It just hurt us more. And we didn't have some things established. Our trust wasn't established during this time last year. And it did. And we got to be better in certain positions, personnel-wise, on the defensive side of the ball. But I believe in our group. I believe in Jordan Leslie. I believe in our defensive staff. And here's what it came to me. It's like, so in 22, we simply weren't good enough. But you just don't forget how to coach, in a 1-year period. And so, like in pass defense, that's one of our issues in 22. Well, we were first in the league in 20 in pass defense. We were third in 21. Explosive plays, huge issue for us this year. Well, we were first in fewest explosives given up in 20, and we were second in fewest explosives given up in 21. We were top 5 in the Big 12, okay, which is the top half in these categories defensively in 20 and 21. And the reason I'm telling you this, because I think sometimes, like, the easy thing to do is, let's just get rid of people. That's going to solve the problem. Well, to me, that's not the issue here. And for us to be better, I think consistency and cohesiveness is more important, and the issues that we've got to fix are more in-house. But we were top 5 in the Big 12 in scoring defense, total defense, pass defense, yards per play, and points per possession in 20 and 21. And so I think the when you start talking about staff change and things like that, it really shifts the blame, where at the end of the day, it's on me. We weren't good enough. But I believe that we have the people in this building that I trust that can get it fixed. And how do I know they can get it fixed? Because we've got it done before. I just went through all the things in 20 and 21 where we gave ourselves a chance to win, and we will do that again in 23. Last thing that I got 2 other things I'm going to hit. Roster construction. Okay, the way I kind of think about the portal as I kind of mature and kind of learn as we go through this process is almost like a bank account. When you go through this portal window, and this is the first time we've really had a window, but the way I was thinking about it is just, you have deposits and withdrawals, right, in banking, and you want to deposit, you hope your deposits more than your withdrawals, right? And that's the way I think about it during this portal window. I hope we are bringing in, all right, more than we're losing, okay? And I don't look like it as a number, right? Because I think everybody in this room understands is the portal works both ways, right? Is we've got to be at a certain number, 85, when we start fall camp. And so some people leave because they want to find more playing time. We got to clear out some space. And then the other thing is some people leave that you don't want to leave, right? And what you want to do is you want to bring in a higher number of starter level players than you're losing. And believe we've done that. I think we lost 2 starters in this process, and we'd love to kept them, but that wasn't the case. But if you look at our portal additions, and I think most of these have been released outside of one guy, but just kind of hit on these guys just to kind of like I did during the recruiting. Is Devin Carter is we lost a lot of production in that receiver room, and a lot of experience, especially with Sam and Bryce going to the next level. And we really felt that we needed to add a 1. And we beat a lot of really good people on him. He's got over 40 career starts in his career, and he's been productive. He's had consistency. And what we believe is we can even make him more productive than what he's been. And I think you'll see his numbers, if he stays healthy, be quite a bit higher than what they were at NC State. Jay-Sean Polk is from Kent State. He's going to play inside receiver. We really felt like we needed to add a returner in this cycle in the portal. And if you look at from a kickoff return standpoint, which was a weakness for us a year ago, I think he's got a chance to really improve us there. And he's coming off an injury where he missed the first half of last year. He's really productive in the back half. So when you're looking at his stats, he only played in 6 football games. Cole Taylor is high priority for a pass receiving tight end, and that's something that we've got to utilize more in our offense as we've continued to run the football better. Last year we did a nice job running the football. We just didn't take advantage of some of those things that when you can run the football that you should be able to take advantage of. Tight end, vertical in the pass game is one of those. Cole's 6'6", 6'7", and he's going to give us that dimension. And that's something that we really pinpointed. We wanted to add a pass rushing threat at the defensive line and from an interior position. And Day Hawkins from Tennessee State, he was at Kentucky. I've got some connections with him. I think he's going to be a really good fit there. Montre Miller comes, if you look at one of the fastest guys, we really felt like one of our missing elements in the pass defense last year was lack of top end speed, and he can really run. We got all these different metrics that you use when you're able to track guys as you go into the portal, and he was one of the fastest corners available, so he's going to compete for playing time right away. And then we added obviously with Casey Legg choosing to retire, we were looking for a guy that was proven, and we bring in Michael Hayes from Georgia State. He did all 3 there. We're very comfortable with what we have in Oliver Straw at punter, but he's going to compete for kickoff and field goals, and he's going to add some distance to our field goal. And he had a high kickoff percentage or touchback percentage last year at kickoff. And then we've got 2 guys that are committed that hopefully within the next couple weeks. I guess I can announce the kid. He signed his GA. Yeah. So bringing in a defensive tackle from Penn State, Fatorma, and he's going to add quality. He's a big body, which we needed a big body that could play the interior defensive line. That'll be 7. And then we've got another guy that is going to that hopefully we can announce here within the next 2 weeks. So that's the current portal guys. And then high school early enrollees, just so you have a note of who's here. Sean Boyle, quarterback. Jaheim White, running back. T.J. Johnson, inside receiver, tight end, kind of hybrid there. Johnny Williams, offensive tackle. James Hurd, Josiah Trotter, Ben Cutter, and Josiah Jackson. All those guys are early enrollee. They've been in workouts, okay? And then kind of just to give you an idea I know a lot of you guys track roster. Right now, and this is with mid-year enrollees and guys that are currently here portal-wise are coming in May. That puts us right at 80. Okay, that's kind of where our number is right now, is right at 80 scholarships. And again, that includes the high school guys coming in May. And then in February, in the signing day here, and whatever that is, week and a half or so, definitely we'll add 1 high school signee, potentially 2, but definitely 1. And then if you're just thinking about portal additions, understanding that you have another window that happens at the end of April. I expect a little bit of attrition during that, and then we'll probably in that 3 to 5 kind of additions. At least one more secondary player. Continue to look for some guys on both fronts, and probably another wideout. Okay, so that's just to have that on your from a portal addition standpoint over the next 3 to 5 months. And then just kind of where we're at now, recruiting this last week contact period. I'll leave later on today. We've had junior days here the last 2 weeks. Got another one on Saturday, and then we started our winter program last Monday, and so today was week 2, start of week 2. So I know that's a lot of information. Want to kind of get that to you. Felt like y'all deserve that since we really haven't talked football since in Stillwater. So with that, I'll take questions. Greg.
So start with Chad and just the offense in general. Is there going to be big change, little change? Obviously, running game looks like a strength on paper.
Yeah, so I think here's where. So I think Graham brought us some really some system things in the pass game, as far as how he taught it and the easiness of learning it. I think that was helpful. I think we really found who we are in the run game, and what we've got to do is we've got to build off that. We really expect that to be a strength. If you look at who we return offensive line wise, who we return in the backfield, what we're going to have at tight end, both quarterbacks have the ability to run, and so we really feel like that's going to be a strength. Now what we've got to do is we've got to be able to build off that, and we've got to be able to hit run action passes. That's how you get explosives. Which we've got to be better at. We should be better at that. If you have the ability to run, you should be able to hit some explosive pass plays. We've got to be able to get our tight ends more active, and we got to be able to take some things in the RPO game off being able to run the ball, because if people commit to the box, you got to be able to take some easy completions. So that's what I would tell you as far as differences.
You were talking about Chad's and how he's built the running back room. What's it say that he did it, the traditional way with all high school recruits? He's not bringing in guys that have college experience. It's all guys he recruited and developed.
Yeah, and I think too is him being in that role. My expectation is that our skill overall offensively it'll give him the ability to get more involved with all our skill positions. From quarterback to receiver to tight ends, and I think he can have some of the same effect on those skill positions, just like he has in the running back from a high school recruiting and a development standpoint.
Big ad, keeping Doug Nestor for another year.
Yeah, I think really, if you look across the line, I think, Doug and Zach, a lot of experience there, a lot of leadership ability. And so people don't think about this, but a lot of times your football team is, during the winter 8 weeks and the summer 8 weeks, there's a ton of growth there, and I said this in our last team meeting before we left in December, and I really mean this. And TCU, I use TCU as an example. So if you think about everybody, there's always a lot of publicity, for lack of a better term, put on who you get in the portal, right? But really, and I really believe this, and is the group of guys that are already in your program, their maturation, their development from the time we left Stillwater until the time we go to State College, that's going to be the defining moment if we're a better football team, is their development. Now we got to add some personnel at key situations, or keep at key spots. That absolutely it must happen. Okay, but the assumption is that will happen. But these guys, that are they going to develop? Who's going to be the Tomas Remack that's sitting in our team meeting right now that was a redshirt freshman, that all of a sudden he starts the last 7 games as freshman All-American? Who are going to be those guys? And so I think that's where it gets lost, because if you look at, TCU, they had some portal additions, but yeah, they kept their guy. They lost some key guys now. Yeah, they lost some key guys, but the guys that made the biggest improvements, the 2 linebackers, the 5 offensive linemen, Miller at running back, you know what I mean? The guys that really made a big jump over that 9 to 10 month period, from them being 5 and 7 to all of a sudden they go on a run in the Big 12, right? And I'm just using them as an example,
Mike's brought players with him that knew his system too.
He did, but if you look at where they came from, there wasn't just a ton of marquee spots where they were coming from, and they lost more, really. But they had and those guys played a lot better in 22 than they did in 21, and they developed some of those guys. And so, for me, our biggest improvement is going to be those guys that were on the team when we left Stillwater, those guys and their growth between now and when we play our first game.
On the Devin Carter front, how long were you looking at him as maybe a wide receiver 1 type of guy, just because those of us who cover recruiting, his story was kind of a bit an odd one, where they thought he was going to the NFL and then he committed to Penn State, ends up with you. And was his connection to Bryce Ford Wheaton a factor at all? Did you talk to Bryce about who is this kid?
So two things that were factors, okay, is number one, his mom is from West Virginia. Okay, she's from the Princeton area, and that was a factor. And you'll have y'all have an opportunity to meet him. That was a factor, and then Bryce, he and Bryce's relationship did matter, and I think he saw the production that Bryce had over the last 2 years, and thought, okay, because these guys, when he's got 1 year left. He was a 4-year starter. They had a good football team, and they do it. Dave does a great job down at NC State, and so he wanted the opportunity to be more productive, and so obviously we lost production, so that was appealing to him. Those two things I just mentioned got us in the door, and then I think offensively he understands that this is a good fit for him. If you look back for a long time, like at different places, our number one guys have been really productive, and I think he's got an opportunity to do that here.
Too bad we couldn't play together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You outlined obviously all the reasons for struggles last year. What would you say to frustrated fans that these changes are going to produce better results?
Yeah, I think that here's what I don't know if this answers is like I'm not I don't stand in front of you in a delusional state thinking, oh yeah, we're just going to keep doing, like I'm very keenly aware that we need to win, right? And so every decision that we've made within the last 6 to 8 weeks has been that, hey, we need to win. And so time will tell, Keenan. Time will tell. But every decision that we've made or that I've made has been for us to have better results in 2023.
You mentioned that during the spring you're going to be looking at the play calling process. Does that mean no final decision's been made on who's responsible for that or how that's going to work? You're going to experiment with some things?
So Kevin, to answer your question, so obviously I've done it for a long time. So last year was the first time I've never done it, or I haven't done it since 2008, I guess. And so Chad, Reagan has play calling experience, but Chad's going to gain experience in the spring, and that's something that we're going to evaluate post spring of kind of where we're at. And so I'll be able to give you. It's not something I'm trying to avoid. It's really, hey, it's kind of a wait and see. I want to give Chad some opportunities in our spring scrimmages to see how he does, and really he'll be able to tell me as much as I'll be able to tell him, and we'll kind of see it, and at the appropriate time I'll kind of tell you when we make that decision what it looks like. Mike, you had a question. I'm sorry.
Kevin stole my question, I guess, but would you kind of liken that a little bit to like your success as a play caller, similar to what you explained about the defense rounding back into previous form too?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So the way I think about it is, and so and to answer your question, Kevin, like I'm not trying to be coy about this. Like I'll be like heavily involved, and I really wasn't that until about the last 3 or 4 games last year. Okay, but I will be like heavily involved in offense. And the way I go back to this is like every opportunity I've had is because of the ability to coach offense, and if you go back from when I was at Troy to Texas Tech, even the turnaround we made at Kentucky, and then as a head coach, like our stats were really, really good, like just offensive stats at Troy and Texas Tech, and then the turnaround and quick in the 2-year fashion there at Kentucky was really good, and then at Troy, from an offense standpoint, we played winning football, and we don't necessarily, like Sports Source Analytics does a really good job of kind of defining what winning football is. In 16, 17, 18, like we played really good winning football, which is complementary, and you're able to do things to put yourself in a position to win. And so, yeah, so like, will I be heavily involved? Absolutely. But as far as who's going to call the plays, is I'm going to wait and see how the spring goes and kind of go from there on that.
Sean could be involved. Sean could be involved in that too. You said.
He'll be in the box. He was involved last year. He's cerebral. He's smart, and he won't be the primary play caller. He will not, but he'll be involved in the process.
And one more. Do you need a schedule?
Do I do the schedule?
Would be nice to know who you're playing and when next year.
Oh, I thought you were asking if I made the schedule.
No, no.
I was gonna say, I was like, you damn sure better know the answer to that.
No, but like as far as opponents and who is and who isn't online, do you have that yet? Do you have like?
I know who we are playing, but I don't know when we are playing. Does that make sense?
What else?
I probably for Gail's over there quick, so I better I better not.
Neal, you mentioned bringing in another wide receiver possibly through the portal. Is that kind of a speed guy on the outside of the
Yeah.
stretch field?
Yeah. So here's what in the receiver room going back. I think you're going to see two guys make big jumps. Jeremiah Aaron and Cortez Braham. Almost every junior college player that I've ever taken has taken a significant jump from year 1 to year 2. And I could go like Damian Willis at Troy, who's still bouncing around the league. Like he year 1 to year 2, huge difference in production. We had a guy at Kentucky, Javis Blue. I mean, I can go on and on, but I really believe those two guys will make big jumps, right? I think Rodney will have an opportunity to play early, maybe even Traylon Ray, okay, depending on, when he gets here, as far as because he's playing baseball, so just depending on where he's at. But I think he's got a chance to help. But I know Rodney will. And then I think there'll be somebody in that room that we're not talking about right now that's going to – who it'll be, I don't know. I'd be speculating. But I think there'll be one guy make a jump. So with all that said – is we still need to add one more. Speed's a premium. Like if you look at it, like out of the portal, there's guys that haven't been very productive that are going and to some places that you look at it and you're like, okay. You go look at their track times, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me now. So it's at a premium. If we can find that, we would prefer to add that.
Coach, on that note, Coach Marshall now has a chance to kind of build a room that is unproven and young. What showed you that he's going to be able to do that at a high level?
Yeah, well, I think when he was here is two things. I think I always think about this now from a coaching perspective. It used to be you got to be able to recruit and develop, right? Well, now you got to recruit, develop, and retain. Okay, and so you retain the guys that you really need to retain. You're not going to retain all of them. That's here and gone. That's never going to happen again, right? But you got to retain the guys that you really need to, okay? And so, his ability to relate is going to help him in that. I've seen him recruit firsthand on campus and does a really good job with all types of different players, all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of geographic regions. And then development piece is he was very active, and some of those guys that made jumps for us when Jared was here, like Bilal really helped him and was active in some of that growth too. So that answer your question. I kind of rambled.
Based on what you've got, particularly in a running back room, has there been some discussions about some creative ways to use those guys in the spring? Maybe
Have to. Yeah, we have to. Yeah. And it really comes down to those guys being unselfish, because if you're going to play more than one running back at a time, we tried that back in 19. It just didn't work, right? Because that's when we had, our numbers. We were low wide out, and we just didn't work because to play more than one true running back, like the other guy's got to block, right? And one of them's got to be able to flex out and run some stuff. Now, what's really unique about where our running back room is, we got some versatility. Like C.J. Donaldson, I mean, he's ran more routes than he has taken carries. Jaheim White has shown the flexibility to do both. So we have some versatility in those rooms. But, like, are we going to spend some time in the spring trying to use two backs at once? Yes.
Do you have any opinions, just because now it's become a little bit of a conversation, especially with what went on with the basketball program, of if the NCAA should limit how many times a player could transfer throughout a career? And you get JT leaving the program for transfers. Do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, everyone's situation is totally different. If injuries happen, you understand it. Player loses a starting job, you get it. But there have been some players that are 3, 4, could even do a 5th with eligibility.
The key, I think you said there, Mike, was that everybody's are different. So everybody's situations are different. So I try not to complain about stuff I don't have solutions for, and I've heard me say that. And so, where it's really gray right now is this, and they should have, but I don't think the decision makers really had the vision to understand how the transfer portal and name, image, likeness, okay, which is really roster bonuses, okay, all right, but how those two things kind of have intermingled, right? I don't think they had the vision for that. Now, as coaches, we kind of saw it coming, but that's what happened. And so now when you start thinking about these transfer situations is like, okay, like I don't think we're ever going to go back where you have to sit out. And like I could argue both sides of that. I could say why it's a good thing and why it's a bad thing. I don't really feel any certain way about that. Now the multiple transfers it's a little bit of an issue, but how do you regulate it? I don't really know. Is it an issue? Yes. I worry about it from this point of view. Okay. So like you think college athletics in general, like I'm a fan. Like I watched, I was in a hotel Saturday night, I left our basketball game right at the end because my daughter was in a volleyball tournament up around Columbus. I get there, what I do, I watch a game. Like I'm a college sports fan. I really am. And so anything I try to look at through fans' perspective is my concern is with the multiple transfers is where you're going to have some fan apathy where they really don't know the players on your roster. And in the professional sports, you at least have a good idea of how many years your top players are going to be there because they have a 2-year contract or a 3-year. Now, they could always be traded, but you at least, for the most part, have an understanding if I'm a Penguins fan, which first hockey game on Friday night, that's first NHL game. I understand why they sold those games out. That's pretty entertaining. But I got an understanding of Crosby, like how many years he's going to, what his contract looks like. Where in college you used to, you sign a kid and, oh man, I'm going to watch him as a freshman and then he's going to grow and be a senior. Well, that's not the case. So like my concern is just from a fan apathy standpoint, them getting frustrated and either not going or not watching because they don't know who's going to be on the team. And so I think the decision makers got to look at that. They have to look at that, and we have to put some, we're not going to go back and say, hey, all right, we're going to be communists and you can't leave it all, right? So, but there's got to be some thought process put into what are the restrictions, and I think we have to look at it from a fan perspective.
Health updates, CJ, Aubrey Burks.
So Aubrey, good, gone through everything. CJ is moving on his feet now, and I think like within the next month, he'll be kind of getting to it, close to being fully released. He'll go through the spring. Yep.
Anybody else health-wise limited in the spring, out for the spring?
That's one thing I didn't really think about, Greg, before I came in here was kind of injuries. Trying to think. Well, pre-spring, I'll give it. But I'm just thinking about Jalen Thornton he may be a little limited in the spring. That's the one that jumps out to me. I'm just trying to think. When we had a workout this morning, who was over with the trainers. But I'll hit on that before spring.
With the different windows, all the changes with roster management, does that change in any way the number that you kind of hold back? Is that still 2 or 3 maybe for the late enrollee walk-ons earning?
Yeah, that's kind of our plan. Yeah, so we're sitting at 80 right now with the assumption is you'll have some attrition, when you hit the spring window. And then depending on where you're at as far as adding pieces, I think you always want to you don't ever want to be exactly at your point because what if a walk-on deserves that? You want to be able to reward them, or if something just falls into your lap, you want to be able to do it.
Was there ever a thought of Rodney Gallagher not playing the basketball season?
I encouraged him to.
Okay.
Yeah, I encouraged him. And I just think, like, there's no – you talk about competitiveness, right, like competition. And so I really believe this. I played high school basketball, and people ask me this all the time, and I kind of kid, but, like, in Kentucky, like, you're split into 16 different regions in basketball, and there's only one state championship in the state of Kentucky. well, like any college venue for the most part that you can think of, college football, like have either played or coached there. All right, that most of the ones that pop into your, and I'm telling you, like there's been probably not very many better environments I've ever been to. Y'all go look at this up in Stearns, Kentucky, McCreary Central, like on a regional semifinal, regional championship game, because people are right there on top of you. I can actually say, like I went to a high school game the other night in the city of Cincinnati, and man, I was sitting there thinking, this is if you can go up and hit a free throw in this atmosphere with people right on top of you, you can feel their breath, then you can go catch a pass in front of 60,000. And so, what'd I get on this for? What'd you ask, Mike? Rodney Gallagher. So Rodney, yeah, going back to that. So like,
There were rumors he wasn't sure if he was going to play
Yeah.
or not. He got his, 1500th, I believe.
yeah.
point?
So anyway, going back to that, that's so encouraging because I don't think there's any replacement for having to perform in pressure situations and in competition. And he's a hell of a basketball player. You know, they've won the Whitfield twice, got a chance to win it 3 times. I think, like, if he didn't play 10 years from now, he would have regretted it. You know, and so he's got plenty of time to catch up on the football. He needs to close that chapter in his career, and so I encourage that because I think that's the best thing for him.
Last question, Cody, that's for
You know, you mentioned Blaine didn't get hired because of who his dad is, but just in terms of, you know, the program, how nice is it to have, you know, someone like him back in the fold?
Well, I think it's definitely beneficial. You know, I think that you know, one thing that happened last year, and this isn't, I'm not trying to publicize this, but this is something that where his mom was able to come back in the building for the first time, you know, last summer, and that was something that you're like, oh, okay, man, this is that was really a neat moment. And then he's just got a ton of connections. You know, it means something to him. The fact that he grew up here in Morgantown, he's a Morgantown High product. Didn't play here, but obviously there's nobody that we could have hired that has more of a connection to the university and to the football program than him. So those are benefits. But there's other people that have those. His ability to teach, and I think he'll be a star in recruiting. You know, we got to teach him the compliance rules and things like that. So it's not going to. But I think he's got a real star because if you can relate and coach the way he coached the professional athletes, then he's going to be a star at this level. Anybody else? All right, thank you all.